My name is Alex Rodriguez, and I want to share with you the story of how I chose to disappoint my family in order to save my soul. This isn't just about choosing art over medicine, it's about the courage to define success for yourself, even when everyone you love believes you're making the biggest mistake of your life. I grew up in Miami, in a traditional Cuban-American family where success had a very specific definition. My father, Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, was a cardiologist who had worked his way up from nothing after immigrating to the US in the 1980s. My mother, Maria, was a nurse who had given up her own career dreams to support my father's medical practice and raise their children. From the moment I could understand words, the plan for my life was clear. I would become a doctor, preferably a specialist like my father, and continue the family legacy of healing and financial success. My parents had sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had, and in return, I was expected to achieve the American dream they had envisioned. I was the oldest of 3 children and the designated standard-bearer for the family's ambitions. My younger siblings, Carmen and Miguel, were also expected to pursue prestigious careers. But the primary pressure fell on me to prove that our family had truly made it in America. Growing up, I was a model student. I maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school, scored in the 99th percentile on the SAT, and was accepted to several prestigious universities with pre-med programs. My parents beamed with pride at school events, family gatherings, and community functions where they could talk about their son, who was going to be a doctor. But there was another side of me that my parents either didn't see or chose to ignore. Since I was 8 years old, I had been obsessed with drawing and painting. I would spend hours in my room creating detailed sketches of everything around me: family members, pets, landscapes, imaginary characters. Art was where I felt most alive, most myself, most connected to something meaningful. My parents tolerated my artistic interests as a hobby that would naturally fade as I got older and more serious about my real future. When I asked for art classes, they agreed, but made it clear that art was secondary to my academic studies. When I won school art competitions, they were polite but not particularly excited. Art was fine as recreation, but it wasn't a serious pursuit for a serious young man. I entered the University of Florida as a pre-med biology major, just as my parents had planned. From the outside, everything looked perfect. I was excelling in my science courses, volunteering at the local hospital, and preparing for the MCAT. My parents would call their friends and relatives to brag about their son who was going to be a doctor just like his father. But inside, I was miserable. I found my science classes tedious and uninspiring. I struggled to memorize endless lists of anatomical terms and chemical processes, not because I wasn't smart enough, but because I simply didn't care about any of it. The material felt meaningless to me, like I was learning a foreign language I would never want to speak. The worst part was the constant acting. I had to pretend to be excited about things that bored me, pretend to have passion for a career that felt like a prison sentence, and pretend to be grateful for opportunities that felt like obligations. I became an expert at saying the right things to my parents, my professors, and my pre-med advisors. Meanwhile, I was living a secret life. I had discovered the university's art studios, which were open 24 hours for art students. I would go there late at night after finishing my biology homework and lose myself in painting and sculpture. I took one art elective each semester, telling my parents it was for well-rounded education. But these were the only classes where I felt truly engaged. I started spending more and more time in the art building, staying up until 3 a.m. working on personal projects. My biology grades started to slip slightly, not enough to alarm anyone, but enough that I had to work harder to maintain the facade that I was a dedicated pre-med student. The art professors began to notice my work and my dedication. Professor Martinez, who taught advanced painting, pulled me aside after class one day and said, "Alex, you have real talent. Have you considered art as more than just a hobby?" The question terrified me because it voiced what I had been thinking but didn't dare acknowledge. The crisis came during my junior year when I was supposed to take the MCAT and begin applying to medical schools. I had been putting off studying for the test, making excuses about being too busy with coursework. But the real reason was that I couldn't bring myself to commit to a path that felt so wrong for me. One night, while I was painting in the studio, at 2 a.m., I had a moment of clarity that changed everything. I was working on a piece that depicted a person trapped in a cage, reaching toward light streaming through bars. As I painted, I realized I was painting myself trapped by expectations. Reaching toward a freedom I was too afraid to claim. I sat in that studio until sunrise, staring at my painting and finally admitting the truth I had been avoiding for years. I didn't want to be a doctor, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to create, to express, to move people through visual storytelling. The thought of spending my life in hospitals and clinics, following someone else's dream, felt like a death sentence for my soul. But admitting this to myself was only the first step. I still had to figure out how to tell my parents that their carefully planned investment in my future was about to be derailed by their son's selfish, artistic ambitions. I started researching art schools and careers in fine arts, trying to build a case that being an artist could be a legitimate, sustainable career. I looked into MFA programs, studied the careers of successful contemporary artists, and researched gallery representation and art sales. I wanted to prove that choosing art didn't mean choosing poverty or failure. I decided to tell my parents. During winter break of my junior year, I had rehearsed the conversation dozens of times, trying to find the words that would help them understand without feeling like I was rejecting everything they had worked for. The conversation took place in our living room on a Sunday afternoon. My father was reading medical journals, my mother was preparing dinner, and the house felt peaceful and normal. I knew I was about to shatter that peace, but I couldn't continue living the lie any longer. "Mum, Dad, I need to tell you something important," I began, my heart racing. "I've decided I don't want to go to medical school. I want to pursue art instead." The silence that followed was deafening. My father looked up from his journal with confusion, as if he had misheard me. My mother stopped stirring the pot on the stove and turned around with a look of shock and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" my father asked. "You're pre-med. You're supposed to take the MAC next month. This is what we've been working toward for your entire life." I tried to explain my feelings, my passion for art, my belief that I could build a successful career as an artist, but my words seemed to bounce off them like they were speaking a foreign language. The concept that someone would voluntarily choose art over medicine was so outside their worldview that they literally couldn't process it. My mother started crying, not just tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs. "How could you do this to us?" she asked. "After everything we've sacrificed, everything we've given up for you, this is how you repay us." My father was quieter, but somehow more devastating. "You're throwing away your future," he said. "You're choosing to be poor, to struggle, to fail. This is not the American dream we came here to build." The conversation lasted for hours, and got progressively more heated. They accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and naive. They said I was ruining my life, and embarrassing our family. They threatened to cut off financial support for college if I didn't reconsider. Despite the emotional manipulation and threats, I held firm. I changed my major to fine arts, started taking the MCAT off my schedule, and began researching MFA programs. My parents were convinced this was a temporary rebellion that I would grow out of once I faced the reality of trying to make money as an artist. The tension at home became unbearable. Family dinners were silent affairs, punctuated by comments about my phase and my irresponsible choices. Extended family members were told that I was taking a break from pre-med to explore other interests. But I could see the disappointment and confusion in their eyes. My parents stopped bragging about my academic achievements and stopped asking about my future plans. When friends and relatives would ask about my medical school applications, they would change the subject or give vague answers about my continued education. The worst part was feeling like I had become a stranger in my own family. The pride and joy I had seen in my parents' eyes, my entire life had been replaced by disappointment and worry. I began to question whether I was being selfish, whether I should sacrifice my own happiness to give them that plan fulfilled. But every time I considered giving up and returning to the pre-med track, I would remember how dead I felt inside when I was pretending to care about medicine. I realized that living someone else's dream would ultimately serve no one. I would be miserable, and my parents would have a son who resented them for forcing him into the wrong life. I finished my undergraduate degree in fine arts with honors and a portfolio that earned me acceptance to several prestigious MFA programs. I chose to attend the Art Institute of Chicago, partly because it was an excellent program and partly because the distance from Miami would give me space to develop my own identity without constant family pressure. Moving to Chicago was both liberating and terrifying. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood and valued artistic expression. My professors and fellow students treated art as a legitimate, important career path rather than a frivolous hobby. But I was also completely on my own financially. My parents had followed through on their threat to cut off support, so I worked multiple part-time jobs to pay for tuition, rent, and basic living expenses. I waited tables, worked in galleries, and did freelance graphic design work to make ends meet. The financial struggle was real, and there were nights when I ate ramen noodles for dinner and wondered if my parents had been right about the practical impossibility of making it as an artist. But even during the hardest times, I felt more authentic and alive than I ever had as a pre-med student. My artwork began to evolve and mature during graduate school. I developed a distinctive style that combined traditional painting techniques with contemporary themes about identity, family expectations, and the immigrant experience. My professors encouraged me to explore the tension between personal desires and cultural obligations, which became a central theme in my work. During my second year of graduate school, I had my first real breakthrough. I was selected to participate in a group show at a prominent Chicago gallery, and one of my paintings, a piece about breaking free from family expectations, sold to a private collector for $5,000. It was the first time I had ever made significant money from my art, and it felt like validation that I had made the right choice. More importantly, the collector reached out to tell me how much the piece had moved her, and how it reminded her of her own struggle to pursue her dreams despite family opposition. That sale led to other opportunities. Galleries started taking notice of my work, art critics began reviewing my pieces, and collectors started inquiring about purchasing my paintings. Within a year, I was selling enough artwork to support myself without relying on service industry jobs. I sent photos of my art and copies of positive reviews to my parents, hoping they would begin to understand that I was building a legitimate career. But their response was lukewarm at best. They seemed to view my success as a lucky accident rather than the result of talent and hard work. The breakthrough moment came when I was featured in Artforum magazine as one of 30 artists under 30 to watch. The article included a full-page reproduction of one of my paintings and a detailed interview about my work and artistic philosophy. For the first time, I had national recognition in the art world. The Artforum feature changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just their son who had made a foolish career choice. I was an artist who was gaining recognition in prestigious publications. My parents began to research my career online and discovered that I was building a reputation and making sustainable income from my art. The turning point came when a museum in Miami acquired one of my paintings for their permanent collection. The local newspaper wrote an article about the acquisition, mentioning that I was a Miami native who had graduated from the University of Florida. My parents, friends, and colleagues started calling to congratulate them on their son's artistic success. For the first time since I had changed my major, my parents called me with excitement in their voices. "We saw the article in the Herald," my mother said. "We had no idea your work was in a museum." I realized that my parents hadn't been opposed to my success. They had been terrified of my failure. They had equated choosing art with choosing poverty, and disappointment, because that was their experience of what it meant to be an artist. Once they saw evidence that I could be both an artist and financially successful, their perspective began to shift. The reconciliation process was gradual. My parents started asking about my artwork, attending my shows when I had exhibitions in Florida, and even purchasing pieces for their own home. They began to understand that my choice to pursue art hadn't been a rejection of their values, but rather an expression of the creativity and determination they had instilled in me. Today, 10 years after that difficult conversation in my parents' living room, I'm a successful working artist with gallery representation in 3 cities. My paintings sell for $15,000, $30,000 each, and I have a waiting list of collectors interested in purchasing my work. I also teach part-time at the Art Institute of Chicago, working with graduate students who are developing their own artistic voices. Many of my students come from families who don't understand or support their artistic ambitions, and I try to provide the encouragement and practical guidance I wish I had received at their age. My artwork continues to explore themes of identity, family, and cultural expectations. I've had solo exhibitions in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, and my work is included in the permanent collections of several museums. Art critics have praised my ability to combine personal narrative with broader social commentary. But perhaps more importantly, I wake up every day excited about the work I'm doing. I feel authentic, fulfilled, and connected to my purpose in a way that I know I never would have felt as a doctor. I'm grateful that I had the courage to disappoint my parents temporarily in order to build a life that feels genuinely mine. Lessons learned: the cost and value of authenticity, choosing to follow my artistic passion over my family's medical expectations, taught me several crucial lessons. Authenticity requires courage. Living according to someone else's definition of success might feel safer, but it ultimately leads to resentment and regret. The courage to be yourself, even when others disapprove, is essential for genuine happiness. Family love survives disappointment. I was terrified that choosing art would permanently damage my relationship with my parents. But once they saw that I was successful and happy, their love and pride returned. Real love adapts to new realities. Success has many definitions. My parents equated success with financial security and social prestige. I learned that success also includes personal fulfillment, creative expression, and making work that has meaning. Both definitions are valid, but I had to choose the one that felt right. For me, cultural expectations can be limiting. Growing up in an immigrant family, I understood the pressure to achieve traditional markers of success to prove that the family had made it in America. But I realized that true success means having the freedom to choose your own path. Your struggles become your strength. The experience of fighting for my artistic identity gave me emotional depth and perspective that enriches my artwork. My paintings about family expectations and personal freedom resonate with viewers because they come from authentic experience. Message for those struggling with family pressure: you're reading this and you're facing pressure from your family to pursue a career that doesn't align with your passions. I want you to know that you're not alone, and that there are ways to honor both your family's love and your own authenticity. First, understand that your family's expectations usually come from love and fear, not from a desire to control your life. They want you to be safe, successful, and happy according to their understanding of what those things mean. Try to see their pressure as misguided love rather than deliberate oppression. Second, do your homework. If you want to pursue a non-traditional career, research it thoroughly. Understand the challenges, the potential income, the path to success. Be able to present a realistic plan rather than just a vague dream. Third, be patient with the process. Family relationships take time to evolve, especially when cultural expectations are involved. Your family may need to see evidence of your success before they can fully support your choices. Finally, remember that you only get one life. Living someone else's dream means sacrificing your own potential happiness and contribution to the world. The regret of pursuing the wrong path is often greater than the temporary disappointment of family members who love you. Your authentic self is your greatest gift to the world. Don't bury it under other people's expectations, even when those people are family members who love you. Trust yourself, do the work, and give your family time to catch up to your vision. We want to hear your story. Have you struggled with family pressure to pursue a certain career? Have you chosen your own path despite expectations? Have you found success by following your passion instead of following tradition? We'd love to feature your journey on our channel. Whether your story involves choosing art over medicine, entrepreneurship over corporate jobs, or any other path that required courage to disappoint loved ones in order to be authentic. Every story of choosing yourself can inspire others to do the same. How to share your story? Send us a message describing the pressure you faced and the choice you made. Tell us how you found the courage to pursue your authentic path. Share what happened with your family relationships over time. Let us know what advice you'd give to others facing similar pressure. Your story of choosing authenticity over approval could give someone else the courage they need to honor their own dreams.